Welcome to the channel and welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Before we get into it, I just want to say what an absolutely devastating day it has been today for football, with the sad news with Diogo Jota and his brother Andre Silva sadly passing away. 28 years old, Jota, his brother 25. Absolutely horrific news. Everything gets put on the back burner when you hear news like that. It becomes, really sad. Someone losing their life in that way is absolutely heartbreaking. Our thoughts go out to family, friends, and all those at Liverpool Football Club. You just got to cherish life, people. As people get taken away unfairly from us every single day. Life is short. Tomorrow's never promised. So, but yeah, absolutely terrible news. And I just want to share my condolences for all those impacted as well. I actually felt a little bit upset this morning as well, hearing that news. Forget about, rivalry and stuff. Anything like that is just absolutely heartbreaking. So condolences to, for the loss, and thoughts go out to everybody impacted by that. What an absolutely devastating day for football. And it feels a bit shit that we have to go through the Man United news as well, but I'm going to go through all the latest. And we're going to start with none other than Mr. Bryan Mbeumo. That is the talk of the town. So let's go through all the latest there. So Manchester United set deadline for Bryan Mbeumo deal as club ready to end transfer saga. They want to reach an agreement by the end of the week. Now that came from the Daily Express. Laurie Whitwell has said that there's still optimism around it. Bryan Mbeumo wants it, and he's made it clear to Brentford, Tottenham and Manchester United at this point where I don't think United want to be seen or paying over the odds for a player when they are tight on finances. And he also said that when they were budgeting for a £30 million Liam Delap and are now having to extend that to more than double of that for Mbeumo, which then dictates what they have to do on the sales side of things, there's going to be a crunch point at some point soon. The 7th of July is when most players are expected to be back for pre-season. What does Bryan Mbeumo do when he's supposed to report for Brentford? And that was an interesting point I felt from Laurie Whitwell. What's Mbeumo going to do when he's due back in training as well next week at Brentford? And obviously he's got his heart set on a move to United. Will that cause a bit of friction there as well? So there's the so-called deadline, although it's not really a hard deadline. That will affect Brentford and Mbeumo as well. So just hope that we can get some movement on here as well. But also an interesting point from Laurie Whitwell saying that United had to pivot because obviously we had the budget and the money to go for Liam Delap, and then when he went for Chelsea, we then moved quickly to try and get a deal done for Mbeumo. And when I say quickly, we identified him and actually made contact quite quickly. We're still 4 weeks down the line and no further forward, but it seems. And then with that, because Bryan Mbeumo's worth more than double what Liam Delap was, that does mean that we have to negotiate and make sure that we're still financially savvy because of PSR, and obviously we're relying on sales for the rest of the transfer window as well, maybe working out the budget as well. But I thought that was interesting points from Laurie Whitwell regarding the situation. Manchester United are preparing to make their final offer for Brentford forward Bryan Mbeumo. Discussions between the United and Brentford restarted on Sunday, with Man United preparing all the details of how far they can realistically go on the deal. Updates over a deal have been slow because United really want to get the next offer right, and the belief is that if their next bid is rejected, they could walk away from the deal and move on to other targets. United had set an internal deadline of Friday for the deal to be done so that the winger could join the club for the start of pre-season on Monday. However, as things stand, there is no agreement in place and that won't happen. So that came from Dean Jones by Give Me Sport, who's a decent source as well. But interestingly saying that, United could walk away from the deal and move on to other targets. I don't necessarily think we would maybe move on because the other targets for Mbeumo's position would be maybe Eze, but he's in talks with Arsenal and might be going there. Semenyo would be another one I would think of, but he's just signed a new contract at Bournemouth. Then you're going down a bit the pecking order, or do we walk away and go and get go and attack the striker position, go and get a striker in, and then maybe use that money for a winger, a fullback or wing back or a midfielder. What do we do? What do we do? It's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because the belief has always been that the deal would have been wrapped up and done and dusted by now, but clearly there's issues in the negotiations. But and I know some of you from yesterday's video said to walk away from the deal as well. I think it all depends on what's being said and what's being asked, because if Brentford have always been, no, we want, I don't know, £65 million and that's it, and United are the ones like hardballing or trying to negotiate the price down, then I think we're to blame for the slowness of this deal, because, Brentford have always said, we want this amount of money, and they're sticking with it. They don't have to reduce the price. The asking price is the asking price. They don't have to reduce it down. And it's going to be very hard to convince a team to do that, in my opinion. But then if Brentford have said, okay, well, we'll accept 62.5, and then we've made that offer, and then they're like, no, we want 65, and then we're trying to make the offer, and then they're like, oh, no, actually, we want 70. If they're like doing it, then it's entirely Brentford's fault as well for the situation. But we are where we are. We just need to hope we can get some movement on this deal, because, there is a concern. The longer it drags on, maybe there is a chance that United would walk away. But then, we've invested so much in Mbeumo that some of the other targets we would maybe want for that position have gone. But it doesn't mean United can't use the money to go strengthen in other areas. Like I said, we could use that money for a striker and maybe a midfielder or a wing back. Dumfries has just come out. Romano said that Dumfries would be available for like 25 million euros. Could you not use that money for a striker and then get Dumfries and then play Ahmad as the 10, or push Bruno at the 10 and get another midfielder in? There's other options. It's just not ideal when you've spent 4 to 5 weeks of your transfer window negotiating for one player to not get that deal done and get it over the line. But it is what it is, and we are where we are. Now, this is the journalist that's actually very close to Brentford, has come out saying that Brentford are holding firm on their asking price for Bryan Mbeumo, as Manchester United face a race against time to reach an agreement for the forward before pre-season starts. The Bees want more than £63 million for Mbeumo and are refusing to lower that valuation. United are said to want to wrap up a move for Mbeumo this week and are continuing to work on a deal. So I don't know what they're in negotiations with or about or for. We don't know the actual details of the deal, or whether, like as I mentioned earlier, whether it's United trying to haggle and lower the price, or whether Brentford are just changing the goalposts every time we make a bid. We don't know what's actually going on. What we do know is it's taken far too long, and there was optimism that a deal would have been done this week, but then we had all the reports last week saying that medical was booked this week and all this nonsense. And the reality is, there's clearly something going on, or there's clearly still a difference between the valuation of what we want to pay and what Brentford want as his valuation as well. And until that gets resolved, who knows what's going to happen? But gives your thoughts and feelings on the whole situation in the comments below. Are you like me? Or you just want to see it done now? Either way, either walk away or get the deal done and get it sorted. It's one of these, isn't it? But we are where we are, and it is what it is. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below, as I'm sure you will. Now let's move on to the Ollie Watkins news. So he's been the talk of the town over the last couple of days as well. So Manchester United are stepping up their interest in Ollie Watkins. United had hoped to land Victor Gyökeres, but United are convinced Gyökeres has decided to join Arsenal ahead of them and have therefore switched their attention to Watkins. Now that came from the Mirror, suggesting that United have fully switched their attention to Ollie Watkins, not waiting for Gyökeres because they feel that he's decided to go to Arsenal. Obviously, we don't know whether Arsenal are going to go for Gyökeres or whether they're going to go for Sesko, although there might be a situation now where Gyökeres might become more financially viable for Arsenal than Sesko with the asking prices and stuff, but who knows? So that maybe is why we're starting to see a lot more links with Ollie Watkins, because maybe there is, a bit more to the story. But who knows? So they also said that Aston Villa want around £60 million for Ollie Watkins, but United are unwilling to pay that much given his age and lack of resale value. And I actually agree with United on that one. I think Ollie Watkins is a good player, and I would be cool with United going for him, but not at £60 million. I think majority of you from the comments on previous videos when we've been mentioning his price generally feel that £60 million is a little bit too much for Watkins, even though he's Premier League proven. He's a goal scorer. 29 is not the end of the world. Like, footballers don't disintegrate when they get to 30. There's been plenty of footballers over the year that are still doing bits beyond 35 and plus. And for strikers as well, I don't think it's an issue necessarily. His age, it's just £60 million plus a big contract at that age. And it's right what they're saying. There is no resale value in that. Not that it bothers us as fans whether we can sell a player on. You just don't want to get trapped with a player that isn't playing anymore with a high contract. That's the mistakes that we've been making in the past. But yeah, I think 60 million would be a little bit too much in my opinion. But I'm sure you will share yours in the comments below. And then Laurie Whitworth said that Ollie Watkins is on the list. They are considering that. Watkins' situation at Villa is an interesting one. They were open to selling him to Arsenal in January. Villa wanted £60 million and Arsenal valued him at £40 million. So maybe the price ultimately maybe might be too much for United at this point if they do push forward with a pursuit. So again, Laurie Whitworth saying £60 million would probably be too much for United. But if we could get that price lowered or maybe do a deal with a player, who knows? But he said, I'm told that contact has been made in terms of checking out what that might look like. So Laurie Whitwell saying that we had a conversation with Aston Villa regarding the actual asking price for Ollie Watkins. And there's no smoke without fire regarding that. But we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Andy Mitten as well said that United first asked about Ollie Watkins in 2020 before he went to Aston Villa, and that was the club asking to be kept informed on any developments, but not acting upon those developments. We're now 5 years on, and another point here is that Ruben Amorim wants Premier League ready players. That was emphasized a little bit by Andy Mitten as well. So this is not a window where you're going to see substantial signings of the likes of Højlund, who are not ready to play in the Premier League immediately. So that's really interesting, which is why we've seen the pivot, because all the noise and the rumours before the transfer window open or before the end of the season where we were going to be going for young players like Master Tuono and Chris Rigg and all of these sort of players we were sort of linked with, and then the transfer window's open and it's Cunha and Mbeumo, Watkins seem to be the three names linked, and there's a few others that we're going to run through in a second as well, because we've only got domestic football. Let's get Premier League proven players, or Amorim wants players that are ready to come in immediately to the first team and won't need any bedding in, which I think is the right approach for where we are at the moment. We've just finished 15th. We need players that can play in the Premier League because our Premier League form is absolutely garbage and dog shit. And we need players that are physically ready to do that job in the Premier League. So I actually, agree with the shift in direction and going for Premier League proven players. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments. Now, sticking with the striker situation, United are still in the mix for Napoli striker Victor Osimhen, according to reports in Italy. The Gazzetta dello Sport said that United have a burning magnetism to sign the striker this season and are still hopeful of a deal being able to be done despite the absence of European football in the new season. United is said to be one of 4 potential destinations for the Nigeria international. Juventus, Al Hilal and Galatasaray are described as the other option. So I read that in the Manchester Evening News, so according to Gazzetta dello Sport, who are a decent Italian outlet, suggesting that there are 4 potential destinations for Victor Osimhen: Juventus, Al Hilal, Galatasaray and us. The problem with Osimhen will still be his salary demand. So that's the issue with Osimhen, is he wants... it's 12 million net, I think it was, from what Romano was saying. So after tax, which is like 300-400 grand a week, we'd have to pay him. And I don't see United going through throwing those sort of salaries at players. I just don't personally. And so unless there's a wiggle room around the salary demands of Victor Osimhen, but while he's on the market, we're still going to get linked with him because he's probably the best striker that is available on the market as well with his release clause. It's just the problem with his wages. It's always comes back to his wages. But yeah, give us your thoughts and feelings on that. One of the 4 clubs interested still in Osimhen. Now, let's move on to the other news. So, Laurie Whitworth said, I think any move for Watkins depends on Rasmus Hojlund's future. It seems he might leave rather than stay, with a sale more likely than a loan. So, Laurie Whitwell, who's, in my opinion, one of the best United journalists as well, saying that any move for Watkins depends on Højlund's future, and he thinks that he might leave rather than stay. So that would be a big tell. So obviously, if we sell Højlund, we're going to need a striker in. And if Lloyd Whitworth is saying, well, he feels that Rasmus Hojlund's going to be sold, then we can only do that if we've got a striker lined up to come in, or we're thinking about doing that deal, because at the moment we're not really in negotiations with anyone apart from Brentford for Mbeumo that we know of anyway. Obviously, we might be doing things behind the scenes and having contact with agents and stuff. We don't actually know all of that, but yeah. So Laurie Whitworth saying that Rasmus Hojlund's future, it seems he's more likely to leave than stay, or might leave rather than stay, with a sale more likely than a loan. I remember their stories the other day were saying that United might look to sell Højlund for less than his book value, just as a way of getting money into the club as well. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. The Mutmatia said that Rasmus Hojlund is still on the way out of Manchester United, with Inter being the most interested in signing him. So again, we'll have to wait and see what happens and see how this moves as the transfer window plays out. But still more noise about Højlund potentially being sold, and still more noise about Inter Milan being his likely destination at the time of recording this video. There's been a few interesting developments regarding Jadon Sancho. So Damarcio has been saying that Juventus are insisting with Jadon Sancho, positive contacts have taken place with the player. So Damarcio, who's, I think quite good when it comes to Italian news, suggesting that positive contacts have taken place with the player. So that's good. Remember, the situation here is that Sancho would need to lower his salary demands for Juventus. Juventus have no problem, I don't think, paying the fee. It's whether he can agree personal terms with Juventus, and then I think this deal could be getting done if things can be agreed with the salary demands of Sancho. Sky Sports said that Jadon Sancho is open to joining Juventus, with talks described as positive. However, there is still work to be done to finalise the fee and personal terms. All parties seem willing to make a deal happen. So again, that's positive. Alfredo Padula, who's decent, said Jadon Sancho's move to Juventus is imminent, with United and Juventus reportedly agreeing on a £25 million transfer fee. And Fabrizio Romano said that after Jonathan David deal done, Juventus have called Man United and Jadon Sancho's camp again this week. Fenerbahce are out of the race and never been in concrete talks. Juventus had contact to discuss conditions of the deal. More clubs have also reached out to Jadon Sancho's camp, so if they can get a bit of a bidding war potentially as well. But again, it'll all boil down to Jadon Sancho's wage demands. That's going to be the sticking point. But it's good that we've got interest, and actually, I think this is better than where I thought we would be with Sancho. I thought we'd end up having to do some sort of loan, and we still might. It still might fall through. He might not lower his wage demands, and then we might have to look at a loan deal, paying him most of his wages for the next 12 months, and then kicking him out as a free transfer next summer. Or do we threaten him with doing a +1 option on his contract, and as a way to force him out? Who knows? But it's positive that we are looking, at maybe doing a permanent exit for Jadon Sancho, which is more than I expected this transfer window, because I've always been under the thought that Sancho will just run his contract down and get a signing on fee and stuff next summer. So if we can actually sell him, I think that would be a big boost for us as well, to remove the wages and maybe actually get some money in as well. So, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. Now, one of the other ways we might be able to do a deal though for Sancho to Juventus is with some kind of swap deal or an exchange, is the way I'm going to word it now. So Manchester United like Douglas Luiz, and he could now become key to the Jadon Sancho to Juventus deal. Now that came from Giovanna, who's actually a good source when it comes specifically to Juventus news, suggesting that maybe Douglas Luiz might become a key factor in the Jadon Sancho deal, whether that's to help Juventus reduce their wage bill, to free up the space to give Sancho maybe more in his wages as well. And I think maybe United would look at something like that as a way to remove Sancho, because Luiz is a player I think we have been linked with by Romano before, so he's clearly a player that we've looked at, and again would tick the box of going back to what Andy Mitten said before about bringing in Premier League proven players that are ready to go. Douglas Luiz, obviously from his time at Villa, has played in the Premier League before as well. Don't necessarily, and I think he would be a good Eriksen replacement as well. I don't necessarily see him as a starter all of the time, although you don't know what Amram's plans are. But I think he'd be a good rotation option for the midfield as well, to give us some cover, a little bit more progressive with his passing and stuff as well. So I actually, not against doing some sort of deal with Jadon Sancho to Juventus and us going for Luiz. I don't think that's a bad shout, personally. The Muppeteers were saying that Douglas Luiz is an option for Manchester United to get the Jadon Sancho deal over the line, and if the club decides to go for a swap. So the Muppeteers also saying that, look, if it comes down to it, then maybe, yes, we would look to do some sort of exchange or some sort of deal with Luiz and Sancho if they can't get personal terms agreed, or if they need a little bit more wiggle room to reach his salary demands or pay up the transfer fee, etc., then they might look to do it there as well, which will be interesting. So that's potentially one to keep an eye on, some sort of deal with Luiz and Sancho. Give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. Be interesting to hear what you've got to say regarding like some sort of swap deal or exchange. I know swap deals don't happen, all right, but before you start, but some sort of deal where we take Luiz and they take Sancho. Give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. Now, from Douglas Luiz to Fabian Ruiz. So Manchester United are interested in Fabian Ruiz, who they see as the perfect box-to-box player for Ruben Amorim's system. He also has interest from other clubs in Saudi. No approach has been made yet, but he is one of the options United is considering. Now, that came from Court Offside. Court Offside have got some credible journalists and some less credible journalists working for them. This came from one of their less credible journalists as well, and it does feel a little bit to me like the Ruiz story, same as what I bought you the other day. He's got, I think it feels a little bit like agent talk, trying to put stories out about United's interest to generate a new contract. It feels exactly what was going on with Donnarumma as well. We were linked with Donnarumma a few weeks ago, if you remember, and nothing came of that. And now apparently he's in contract negotiations with PSG, and it feels a little bit similar for me personally for Ruiz. I will bring you any more updates though if they come out. If any more credible reports come out regarding it as well, but give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. Now let's go through the rest of the news. So there is no real expectation that Andre Onana will leave Manchester United this summer. That came from Nave. So looks like at the moment, according to the latest reports, Onana's not going to, there's no expectation that Onana will be sold. There's no clubs interested. There's no bids. There's no negotiations. The only team we had murmurings about was one from the Saudi Pro League, but they've bought another goalkeeper, and talk maybe Monaco, but that was pretty much dismissed because they can't pay his wages. So there is no other talk about Andre Onana leaving. So it's the more likely scenario at the moment is that Onana stays, maybe Bayinda gets sold, and then we look to bring in a younger goalkeeper to compete with Onana, which I'm cool with, as long as that player is, you know, ready to go and ready to take over. And then if Onana makes any mistakes, then out you go. New goalkeeper comes in, because I don't think Bayinda is the answer to the replacement for Onana. I think he makes just as many mistakes as Onana does. Fills me with no confidence at all. But if you can get somebody in of the quality, so if Onana does make mistakes, you can get him out the team and give him something to worry about, then I'm, you know, it is what it is, because, you know, Andre Onana's on big wages, and unless it is the Saudi Pro League, I can't see anyone paying him the wages to go. So we are in a bit of a position with that as well. But yeah, we'll have to see how it all plays out. Give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below, as I'm sure you will. And so Marcus Rashford is unlikely to stay at Manchester United, and it is a tricky situation as his wages are very high. His departure from the club could take a while to figure out. There are only a few teams that can pay his salary, or 50% of the salary in case he goes on loan, but most of those teams have a very good left winger in their squad, or a good striker. It will be very interesting to see if he will be allowed to train with the squad or separate from the team. So that came from Laurie Whitwell, making a good point that, you know, unless Rashford does something with his wages, there's not very many teams out there that are going to pay him 300 odd grand a week. And those teams that can already have very good wingers or strikers in their positions as well. And then even if we paid 50%, even for 150 grand a week, they're still good. There's still teams that have got, you know, good wingers and good strikers as well. So that's an interesting point. But then also interesting from Laurie Whitwell, what will happen on Monday when the team come back. It would be interesting to see what happens with the Rashford, Garnacho, you know, maybe even Sancho's situation. Are they put into the corner, and, you know, or will they be with the first team? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see what happens. If we don't get any movement by then, and it's looking unlikely because it's, you know, Thursday and players are back in training on Monday. So, you know, there'd have to be some really significant movements over the weekend for any deals to get done, because it doesn't seem like anything's close with anybody at the moment, apart from Mbeumo. That seems to be the only one. And maybe Sancho. I would say Sancho, there's some legs in that, and potentially something that can be done fairly quickly. But Give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. And then Betis have launched a bid to get Antony from Manchester United, but the terms of the deal are yet to be fully worked out. Betis want another loan and a mandatory purchase in 2026, but the forward's salary remains a problem. They need help from Manchester United on that front. Beyond that, they need an agreement with the player and his agent. In reality, Antony needs to take a pay cut for Betis to be able to afford him fully and fit into the spending limit imposed by La Liga. So that came from Seville news outlet. They're actually fairly good, fairly reliable when it comes to Real Betis and Sevilla news as well, suggesting the same thing, that Antony needs to take a pay cut, or we'll have to subsidise or do some sort of deal where we're paying Antony either on a loan or permanent deal. Who knows what's going on? It's annoying, and I get that, you know, someone made a good point in the comments yesterday that I get the frustration. Like, it might be our only opportunity to get rid of Antony, but it's still shit. If they can't afford his wages and can't afford his salary, and they can't afford his transfer fee, then what are we doing? What are we doing? Because Antony's in a position where it's World Cup year. He's just got back into the Brazil squad because of his performances at Betis. So if they can't afford him, they can't pay his wages. And Antony's just going to not even be on the bench next season. He's going to be, you know, in the squad, but that's about it. So surely he would then maybe take a move somewhere else if we couldn't get a deal done with Betis. But it just seems we're facilitating this particular move when clearly it's very complicated to do. But maybe it is United's only option. Maybe it is the only option. We have to try and do something with Betis, but it is what it is, and you know, we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. But that's you all up to date with the latest transfer news and updates. So give us your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Be interesting to read those later. Don't forget to smash the like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.